Make us instruments of your peace. Where there is indifference, may we bring justice. Where there is selfishness, may we bring equity. Where there is stagnation, may we bring transformation. Where there is homogeneity, may we bring pluralism. Where there is isolation, may we bring interdependence. Where there is greed, may we bring generosity. And where there is hatred, may we bring love. Make us instruments of your peace, with love at the center of everything we do.
Today we are exploring a faithful Unitarian Universalist response to the ongoing humanitarian crisis in Palestine. It is my habit when entering into a conversation that doesn't really need my perspective to ground myself in my relationship to that conversation. And when I say that this conversation doesn't need my participation and my perspective, what I mean is I'm not here today to offer any hot takes on how we got here. I'm not here to offer any resolutions or any opinions about how things should go. My opinions are not needed here, particularly because I'm not directly related to the issue. The only role in which I am needed here is as your minister. I am tasked with providing you with an ethical and moral framework for interpreting the world as Unitarian Universalists, which, by the way, you are always welcome to reject or accept as you see fit. The people who are most directly involved in this issue don't need my opinions, but you might find some of them helpful, so here we are. To ground myself in my relationship with the issue, I will reiterate that I went to a divinity school, shared a campus with a rabbinical school. In January 2016, I was able to cross-enroll in a class that took us to Israel for a couple of weeks to study religious education in interfaith settings. Early into the trip, it became clear that this class was not going to be exactly how it had been promoted. First, we went to an Israeli school. Then we toured a Palestinian school. Then we went back to a different Israeli school. And when we asked them about interfaith schools, we were met with total confusion. And we began to realize that there is no interfaith religious education setting in Israel-Palestine. Israeli and Palestinian children are raised completely separately from one another. There are some outliers to this cultural practice. We met a rabbi who ran summer camps for kids that was intentionally to build relationships between Israeli and Palestinian children. It's called Kids for Peace. It was remarkable to have met him because his program was unique. It was the exception to the rule, if you will. The average Israeli grows up completely separated from the average Palestinian, and the first time that they meet is during the compulsory military service of young adult Israelis sent to guard their nation against Palestinians and others. In this system, how could there possibly be any other outcome than what we are witnessing now? The animosity between Israelis and Palestinians has been around for a long, long time. The reasons for the tensions are complex, and I think, if I'm being honest, beyond the understanding of Americans who haven't spent a significant amount of time studying it. My biggest takeaway coming back from Israel and Palestine is that I didn't know enough about the intricacies of Israeli-Palestinian history to draw a conclusion. I went there with opinions and conclusions, and I came back with humility. But here we are now. I'm going to give some estimates so that we have a shared understanding of the scope of the current conflict in Israel-Palestine. On October 7th, 2023, Hamas attacked a music festival and killed approximately 1,200 people, the largest incident of the killing of Jews since the Holocaust. They systematically committed violent acts of sexual assault. They took approximately 250 hostages. It is estimated by PBS that about 70,000 Palestinians have died in the subsequent Israeli response. Approximately 1,000 Israeli soldiers and citizens have also died in the conflict, according to the Times of Israel. The parties that are directly engaged in this ongoing conflict are in a pattern of action and reaction that is unremitting. Both sides are fighting for their right to exist and to live on land that they believe is theirs. And meanwhile, we in the United States are in a dangerous time of our own. We have found ourselves in a deeply anti-intellectual period, a time when we are expected to live by a purity code or suffer steep consequences. And when I say purity code, I mean there are a series of litmus tests for just about everything that has been developed by the religious right and put into action by the Republican Party. You are supposed to fall into their pattern of opinions and behaviors, and if you don't, then you are swiftly denounced. For a group of people who have spent so much time complaining about cancel culture, it is remarkable how quickly they can cast people out. When I was in Israel, perhaps the most shocking thing that I saw in 2016 was the number of billboards for conservative Republican politicians lining the road to a baptismal site on the Jordan River. The Gospels teach that Jesus was baptized in the Jordan, and people come from all across the world to follow this tradition. And there, in this beautiful, holy place, was Donald Trump smirking at us from a billboard, amongst others. Many conservative Christians believe that the nation of Israel must be supported without question in order to facilitate the second coming of Jesus and bring about a period of peace and prosperity. And I know to the outside ear that might make little sense, but it is a deeply held belief called millennialism, and I actually was raised in a household that believed this. Because of this belief, many conservative Christians will not tolerate any criticism of the nation of Israel. And this underpins one of those litmus tests of our current context, that of anti-Semitism. We live in a false dichotomy where if you criticize the Israeli government, then you risk being denounced as anti-Semitic. It is desperately important that we are able to speak about our concerns with the Israeli government's actions without fear of being labeled anti-Semitic. Otherwise, we give them a blank check to operate with impunity. No nation should operate with impunity. Not only that, but anti-Semitism is actually on the rise in our nation. Actual anti-Semitism is on the rise. A 2021 Pew Center study found that 75% of Jewish respondents felt there was more anti-Semitism in the US than there was in the year before, and just over half reported feeling less safe. Anti-Semitism is on the rise, and we need to understand what actually constitutes anti-Semitism so that we can make morally clear statements about the conflict in Israel-Palestine, and so we can protect our Jewish loved ones and neighbors at home. Bullying people for wearing overtly Jewish signs like a kippah is anti-Semitic. Denying the reality of the Holocaust and its ongoing legacy of trauma in Jewish communities, that's anti-Semitic. Holding individual American Jews responsible for the actions of a foreign government is anti-Semitic. And other things. Those are just a few hopefully obvious examples from that Pew Center study. Keeping people locked in a false dichotomy of either you must accept the actions of the Israeli government, full stop, or you are anti-Semitic, is a tool of thought control. We must be able to think and speak critically and freely of the Israeli government, as is true of all governments. We must be able to use logic and rationality to respond to difficult situations, not at the expense of emotion, but as a means of doing something about our emotions. As Unitarian Universalists, we are deeply rooted in our value of interdependence. It's been around longer than any of the other things that we currently call our capital V values that I can think of, that we can trace back through our history. We believe that we are all connected, and we believe that injustice impacts all of us. And that is one of the reasons why we are so committed to justice work. That is why the plight of Palestinians, particularly those in Gaza and the West Bank, just tears at our hearts. And there's another capital V value that we need to bring forward at this moment, and that is pluralism. We believe that more than one truth can exist at any given time. Unitarian Universalists believe in nuance, and that is something that is badly lacking in our national discourse, particularly on this issue. Now, when I say that we can bring a level of nuance, I want to be very clear that I do not mean being mealy-mouthed. What I mean is that we can take a stance that criticizes the actions of the Israeli government while also speaking out clearly against anti-Semitism. We can also support the right of the nation of Israel to self-determination while acknowledging that there are certain bright lines that no nation should ever cross. It's possible to hold all of these perspectives at once and more. A faithful Unitarian Universalist response to the humanitarian crisis in Israel-Palestine, specifically Gaza and the West Bank, must be grounded in both our interdependence and our pluralism. And the good news is that we are not alone. We're not on our own here. We, as individual UUs and as an individual congregation of UUs, we have existing structures to support us in understanding and doing something about the situation. In 2024, our annual Unitarian Universalist General Assembly adopted an action of immediate witness, basically a statement called Solidarity with Palestinians. It's an important document, and it outlines a UU response to the ongoing conflict, including a brief history of how we got here, and it specifically calls UUs to engage in 3 actions: witnessing, educating, and organizing and advocating. Those 2 are linked together. Witnessing sounds vague, so I'm going to share with you some of the language from the document about witnessing. It calls for the liberation of Palestine and the end of apartheid. It calls for us to declare our moral outrage and to share our horror at Israel's massacre, mass incarceration, torture, destruction of the land, and decimation of systems of care that support life in the region. It also calls for an immediate, permanent ceasefire, massive humanitarian aid, and the release of all captives, and an end to genocide around the world. That's all language directly from the action of immediate witness. I recommend that you read it in its entirety. It's really easy to find with a Google search. As for education and organizing and advocacy, there's already a group that supports UU congregations in these efforts by providing resources and guidance. They're called UUs for Justice in the Middle East, or UJME. They were founded in 1971. I was born in 1979. They've been around longer than me. They know what they're doing. Their mission is, quote, to work with the UU community to educate and mobilize individuals, congregations, and denominational leaders to recognize and counter inequality and injustice in Palestine, Israel, to support our allies in the global justice and anti-oppression movements. We need that. They exist. They provide resources and materials for congregations and chapters of UJME to use in their efforts to better understand the situation and to work for justice. And I am proud to say that our congregation has recently begun a chapter of UUs for Justice in the Middle East, and we are currently the only chapter in all of Indiana. In the coming weeks, you'll hear more about our chapter of UJME and what they hope to accomplish here at UUCFW. And remember, in UU Church, you don't have to do anything you don't want to. It's okay. If you're scared, this is not you, it is okay. No one's gonna force anybody to do anything. Our chapter includes John Moore, Chuck Wolf, Mike Google, Andy Candor, Elena Gill, Victoria Gibson. I'm grateful to these lay leaders for taking on this important task of connecting our congregation to reliable information and positive actions that are grounded in Unitarian Universalist values and principles about such a difficult subject. Beloveds, we don't have to agree on anything. We don't have to agree on a singular perspective in the Middle East in order for us to all agree that we are witnessing a humanitarian crisis. As Unitarian Universalists, we are called to use both our hearts and our minds to combat injustice around the world because we believe that we are an interdependent species. In the face of a humanitarian crisis, we cannot allow ourselves to be silenced by the fear of getting it wrong. We must be able to be courageous and humble and vigilant in our efforts to multiply justice around the world. And after all, it is only ever justice that can lead to a true and lasting peace. May it be so. Amen, and blessed be.